3 spine-chilling stories of sinister encounters alone at work expose the haunted truths. Angela sat hunched at her desk, the flickering fluorescent lights overhead casting ghastly shadows that twisted and turned in the corners of her vision. The hum of machines filled the sterile office, but tonight, it felt more like a tomb, quiet, lonely, and increasingly sinister. Her fingers danced across the keyboard, tapping out mundane words while the memories of her 2 children surged forth, their innocent faces haunting her. She was in a familiar place, yet it felt profoundly alien, like a nightmare wrapped in a dream. The soft echo of her workday was replaced by a disconcerting silence. No co-workers around to share a laugh, just the security guard's dull presence lurking in the edges of her periphery, a shadowy reminder of safety that turned menacing in the stillness. Then, her attention was snagged by a slip of paper wedged beneath the desk. It detailed every mundane aspect of her life with eerie precision: when her kids returned from school, when she picked them up, even her short breaks, all woven into a tapestry of unsettling specificity. Cold dread blossomed in her stomach. Who had watched her? Who had written this? Before she could grapple with the implications, her phone buzzed, a message from her boss, cryptic and twisted. "You know, Angela, you really should work a bit harder. Wouldn't he want anything to happen to those sweet kids of yours, now would we?" What a sick joke, she thought, moisture gathering in her palms. It could just be workplace banter, but the threat loomed heavy, suffocating her with an icy grip. This was no longer just exhaustion talking, it felt like a drawing net, ready to ensnare her. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The lights flickered again, erratically, throwing the office into disjointed flashes of light and shadow. A shiver traversed her spine, the unmistakable sensation of being watched prickling at her skin. She took a deep breath to steady herself and stepped away from her desk, each step feeling like a surrender as the air thickened with dread. Would it be safer to confront this fear? Or maybe just hunker down and finish her work? When she spotted the security guard, his figure frighteningly statue-like, eyes drilling into her. Sweat pooled at her temples. Was it paranoia or a genuine threat? He lingered, a moment too long, like he was holding a secret that had her name on it. Unable to shake the feeling of danger, her heart raced as she sprinted back to her cubicle, yet, when she returned, the notes had multiplied. Scribbled images of her children twisted across her desk, each drawing more grotesque than the last, showcasing scenarios she had never dared to envisage. The walls closed in as a coughing wave of panic set in, but she forced herself to drill down into her work. She needed to escape, but the gnawing realization hit her hard. This was not simply a twisted game, it felt like a meticulously woven plot, pulling her deeper into a world of malevolence. As she decided to confront her boss, the lights blinked out entirely, plunging the office into darkness, giving way to the flickering glow of emergency lights. From the shadows came the chilling sound of a child's laughter, a haunting echo that reverberated through her very bones. Fear punctured her resolve, and she froze, heart thundering, as the darkness closed in. What untold horrors awaited her next? Angela stood frozen in the flickering darkness, her breath catching as the laugh echoed hauntingly again. It was soft at first, then grew louder, teasing, taunting her. Instinct screamed for her to flee. Yet something rooted her to the spot. The chilling sensation of being ensnared tugged at her mind, refusing to let her move. "Get a grip, it's just a prank," she whispered to herself, but the tremor in her voice betrayed her. The glow of emergency lights cast long shadows, dancing like specters across the office walls. She squinted into the darkness, heart racing. The laughter faded, replaced by an unsettling silence that felt thicker, heavier. Suddenly, her phone vibrated again, a sudden, jarring jolt in the silence. She glanced down, her heart skipping a beat. Another text from her boss. "Did you find what you were looking for, Angela? The kids are waiting for you. The message sent ice through her veins. How did he know? She hadn't said anything to him about the drawings or even the feeling of dread that gnawed at her. It was all too personal, too pointed. Angela's instincts finally broke through, propelling her to her desk, rushing to grab her things. But as she reached for her bag, she halted, her fingers brushing against a note. Confusion swarmed her. Another piece of paper. Trembling, she unfolded it. It's too late for them. Panic clawed at her, and she dropped the note, the chilling words embedding into her mind. Outside, she could hear the sirens of the city drifting, distant and unhelpful. The world felt eerily disconnected, a cruel illusion of safety while she faced her own torment behind these glass walls. With a renewed rush of adrenaline, Angela sprinted for the exit. The emergency lights flashed faster, creating a strobe effect that disoriented her. Just as she reached the door, her phone buzzed yet again. She hesitated, longing to ignore it but felt an unshakable urge to see what horror awaited her. Tick-tock, Angela. There's no rush. They're safe for now. Every muscle in her body screamed for movement, but she felt like she was sinking, each second slipping away with her resolve. Outside the door, murmurs echoed as if the shadows were whispering her name. Angela. The voice was sweet, innocent, and all too familiar. Her heart sank, dread gripping her. It was the voice of her youngest, the one who loved to play hide-and-seek. That sweet, innocent giggle was now twisted into something dark. Every instinct told her to push through and escape, yet hope lured her with the promise of safety. Instead, she closed her eyes, smushing her palms against her ears, trying to block out the haunting echoes. Help me. She jolted, snapping her eyes open. The office had transformed. Where sterile cubicles stood before, now dark hallways lurked, shadows shifting just out of reach of her sight. There was no escape. The air had thickened, becoming a suffocating blanket that weighed her down, pulling her closer to the ground, and then, the unmistakable sound of footsteps, slow, deliberate, creeping closer. They were coming for her. Struggling against the very atmosphere that seemed intent on holding her captive, Angela bolted, unsure of where to go, but knowing she had to escape. Each frantic heartbeat screamed in her ears. But in a sudden rush of clarity, one thought crystallized through the chaos: what had she done to deserve this torment? The answer loomed darker than the shadows, knowing that her past choices might have woven this tangled web of horror. With nowhere left to turn, she skidded to a stop, heart racing. And there, amidst the darkness, light flickered again, revealing the figure of her boss standing ominously at the far end of the hallway, a twisted smile creeping across his face. Angela. I've been waiting for you. What had she unknowingly invited into her life? The terror enveloped her as she whispered, "What do you want?" And in that moment, the lights went out again, leaving her in a suffocating void. But what would happen when the glow returned? Angela's chest tightened, suffocating in the dark. She could almost hear her heart slamming against her ribcage, each thud echoing the dismal silence that enveloped her. The familiar contours of the office dissolved into nothingness, replaced by an oppressive void. She gritted her teeth against the rising panic, desperately seeking any flicker of light, any way out of this nightmarish scene. Then, unexpectedly, the glow returned. The emergency lights flickered back on, illuminating the hallway in a dim, ghostly hue. But the figure of her boss was gone, leaving behind an echo of his last words that circled in her mind like a hungry predator. "I've been waiting for you. Stop playing games." She shouted into the abyss, anger mingling with fear. Her voice felt fragile, like ice skimming over molten lava. No answer came, just the echo of her own desperation. Driven by primal instinct, she turned back toward the door. Each step felt heavier, as if the ground itself resisted her. Her phone buzzed to life again, its light cutting through the gloom like a beacon. This time, she didn't think twice. Her hands trembled as she opened the message. "Go back, Angela. You can't run from it." A chill slithered down her spine. The voice inside her head screamed, telling her to keep moving, that the darkness was alive and hunting her. But another part of her, a darker, insidious whisper urged her to confront the terror wrapping around her like a vine. She stepped hesitantly back toward her desk, her breath coming slower now, each inhale shaky with dread. The note lay crumpled on the floor where she dropped it, its message taunting her. "It's too late for them." The weight of those words crashed over her like a wave, dragging her down into an abyss of guilt. She had ignored signs. She had brushed aside strange occurrences, thinking they were figments of overworked imagination. But this was different, this was real, and it was towering over her like a menacing giant. Angela, the innocent call of her child's voice beckoned her from the shadows again, tangling with her own deep-seated fears. She squeezed her eyes shut, pressing her palms harder against her ears, willing it all to disappear. But the laughter broke through once more, echoing with a malicious tone. It wrapped around her, suffocating her resolve. "Mommy, I'm hiding. Come find me." The memories rushed back, days spent playing in the park, laughter drifting through the air like music. But this wasn't her daughter's voice, it was a cruel mimicry. The pull of nostalgia was a treacherous trap. Snap. A sudden noise brought her out of her spiral. The sound was sharp, like a twig breaking underfoot. Her heart leapt to her throat as she positioned herself to face the origin of the sound. "Who is there?" She called into the void, but the question came out as a whisper, audibly shaking. A flicker of movement caught her eye. A shadow shifted in the corner, she couldn't wait any longer. Panic surged back, pushing her forward. She needed to get out. The exit. The escape route. Angela bolted down the hallway, heart hammering, determined to reach the safety outside this nightmare. But a figure stepped into her path, a child, pale with dark eyes gleaming. "Mommy, it's not just a game anymore." Angela froze, horror coursing through her. She wanted to scream, to run. But the moment hung like a noose around her neck. "What do you mean?" she whispered, breathless. The child's face twisted into a grin, revealing something sinister beneath the innocent facade. "You let me in, Mommy. You let me out." A heartbeat. 2. Then everything plunged into darkness once more, thick and suffocating, leaving only silence and a lingering question in the air: what had she unleashed? The horror was far from over. Something far worse awaited her in the veil of darkness. The silence wrapped around Angela like a shroud, each second stretching into an eternity. The child's words echoed in her mind, coiling tighter, squeezing the breath from her lungs. She tried to shake the dread, but every muscle in her body felt heavy, weighed down by an unseen force. "Let me out!" a whisper slithered past her ear, icy and intimate. She shot her head around, heart pounding wildly. But the corridor was empty, shadows dancing mockingly in the emergency light. The child was gone, yet the remnants of that grin lingered like a vile stain on her sanity. Taking a shuddering breath, she remembered the path to the exit. She needed to leave, she needed to escape. Steeling herself, she stumbled forward, her feet forced to move despite the turmoil roiling within. The walls seemed to breathe, pulsating as if the very building had a heartbeat, matching the tempo of her racing pulse. Step by step she approached the stairwell. The door loomed ahead like a portal out of hell, promising safety. With shaking hands, she grasped the handle, the cold metal seeping into her skin. As she pushed the door open, the hinges let out a drawn-out creak that echoed down the stairwell, yet, as she made to step through, a sudden weight pressed against her back, forcing her to stagger forward into the darkness beyond. There was no turning back. Inside the stairwell, the dim light flickered erratically, revealing scuffed walls and peeling paint. Climbing the steps felt like wading through molasses, the air thick and sour in her throat. Each footfall resonated loudly, swallowed by the emptiness. Angela, that voice again. Childish. Playful. But now it twisted into something threatening. She whirled around, instinctively looking for the source, but all she could see was the flickering light teasing her senses. "Mommy, I'm on the next floor. You can't find me." The laugh that followed chilled her to the bone, a sound so wrong it reverberated in her skull. Panic ignited her veins, and she stumbled upward, driven by a primal urge to escape whatever grotesque game was unfolding around her. As she reached the next landing, the lights dimmed further, the corridor now an abyss of shadows. A cold draft brushed against her, a whisper of something that didn't belong. She turned desperately, seeking a way out, but caught sight of something etched into the wall, a drawing. A crude depiction of a child, arms outstretched, eyes dark and haunting, swallowed her whole. Underneath, in shaky handwriting, were the words, "You saw me, now you're stuck." Chilled dread coursed through Angela, turning her blood to ice. She stumbled back, only to hit something solid. It felt wrong, a presence that watched, waited. She turned slowly, eyes wide with terror, but no one stood behind her. Only the shadowy void seemed alive. Then, in the corner of her eye, she caught movement, something darting, long limbs gangly and unnatural, disappearing around the corner. "Stop! Please!" She screamed, her own voice small against the terror that loomed. But the sound echoed, ricocheting off the walls and giving proof to her isolation. There was no one to hear, no one to help. Desperately, she charged down the hallway, each step a frantic bid for survival. Was there any escape from this nightmare? She could feel the darkness creeping closer, its smothering grasp tightening around her. Angela, it was a rasp, closer now, each syllable laden with malice. She rounded the last corner, and the exit sign flickered in the distance. Hope ignited within her. She sprinted towards it, heart racing, breath hitching, her salvation was so near. But just as she reached the door, it swung open. A figure stood there, silhouetted against the light, blocking her path. "Are you ready to play?" Fear constricted around her chest, forcing out a silent scream. The sealed fate of her choices hung in the air, glaring with inevitability. Angela had only one thought: run. But could she escape what had already taken root in the shadows? The sinister game had merely begun. Angela stumbled backward as the figure loomed in front of her, the exit light flickering ominously behind. Panic surged like a tidal wave, choking her resolve. What stood in her way? The crisp outline of its body was disfigured by shadows, and the air around it felt charged with malice. "Playtime." The voice crooned, a sing-song mockery that twisted as it escaped the figure's lips. The small face that emerged was familiar yet distorted, a warped rendition of the child she had seen moments ago. "Get away from me!" she shouted, her voice trembling but fierce. She darted to the side, desperate to squeeze past the nightmare blocking her path, but it moved with uncanny quickness, matching her every panicked step. The laughter echoed through the corridor, squeezing tighter around her mind. Every inch of the hallway seemed to stretch indefinitely. Angela could almost feel the walls closing in, a suffocating prison of malevolence. "Angela!" The sweet plea turned sour, twisting through her veins. It felt like poison, each syllable constricting her ability to think, to breathe. Frantic, she leaped back the way she came, but the shadows shifted, morphing into grotesque shapes that lunged at her. "No, no!" she gasped, eyes wide as she bolted deeper into the darkness, driven by sheer survival instinct, heart thrumming wildly. Every corner she turned revealed more distortions, echoed laughter, but no exit. "Mommy? You missed the fun. Come play with us." The chorus of cruel, childlike giggles pierced through her thoughts, spurring her legs into a desperate sprint. Her breath burned in her chest, each pulse of adrenaline sharper than the last. She could still feel the thing behind her, its presence electric, and its intent not just to frighten, but to ensnare her completely. As she turned another corner, the hallway opened up into a room, its interior cloaked in an oppressive gloom. Unable to stop herself, she dashed inside, slamming the door behind her. The thud resonated like a drum, echoing her racing heart. The room felt stale, the air thick with dust and a rancid smell that gnawed at her stomach. She pressed her back against the door, desperately checking for a lock. There was none. A single, flickering bulb swung from the ceiling, casting elongated shadows that danced like phantom figures. "Angela!" The voice drifted through the cracks, taunting her. She covered her ears, willing it away, but she could feel it seeping in, creeping through her thoughts, leaving dark stains in their wake. With no time to think, she scanned the room frantically. A window. She dashed towards it, heart pounding louder than the laughter still ringing out there. As she reached for the latch, a chilling realization gripped her. The glass was blackened, obscuring the outside world. She couldn't tell if it was night or day, life or death beyond the barrier. "Let me out," the voice whispered again, softer now, a twisted version of her own cries for help. Angela's breath quickened as dread clawed at her throat, choking any remaining courage. She fumbled with the latch, pressing against the glass, desperate for escape. That it was only a whisper of movement at first, a low breath against her neck. She froze, gut twisting as she felt a presence looming closer, cold and suffocating. Slowly, she turned. The child stood inches away, eyes glowing with a predatory hunger. Behind him, darkness writhed as if alive. "Are you ready to play?" he asked suddenly, the disturbingly sweet tone mirroring the horrific grin plastered on his face. Angela's heart stopped. This was no innocent game. In that moment, she understood the most crushing truth. This was her new reality, lost forever in a place where the living became the prey of shadows. And in that sinister grin, the all-consuming question lingered, resonating in the haunted silence: who had truly been playing all along? Angela's breath hitched as she stared into the eyes of the twisted child. They seemed to swallow the light, reflecting back an insatiable darkness. The air in the room grew thin as if the shadows were squeezing the very life out of her. "Why won't you play?" he pressed, the sweetness of his question sharp as broken glass. He stepped forward, and a chill raced down her spine. She stumbled backward, still pressed against the door, every instinct screaming for her to run, but where? The walls felt alive, closing in, constricting around her like a serpent tightening its grip. She glanced towards the flickering bulb. It offered little comfort, struggling against the encroaching blackness. Angela felt the urge to scream, but instead, her words caught in her throat like shards of ice. She couldn't give in to fear. "Not now. Leave me alone." She managed to croak, her voice hard and brittle, a stark contrast to the innocence that once resonated in the child's tone. The laughter melted into a hiss, a sound that paralyzed her. "Playtime is special," he insisted, his face swirling with an eerie enthusiasm. "I want you to join us." He reached out, skeletal fingers stretching towards her, and Angela's heart raced even faster, each beat a reminder of her own fragility. With a sudden burst of adrenaline, she lunged for the window again. Panic surged through her limbs as she clawed at the blackened glass, desperately seeking a reflection of freedom. But the darkened pane showed nothing but her own terrified features, twisted by despair. "Mommy!" he wailed, the words echoing like a haunting lullaby. "I just want to play. You don't want to disappoint the others." The shadows behind him thickened and swirled, revealing ghostly figures, children twisted into forms of horror. Their eyes, empty and wide, begged her for attention, for acknowledgement, for release. "Stop it. Stop. Just let me out." The words poured from her lips in a frantic urge, more of a plea than a command. The child's smile flickered for a moment, a shadow of hurt crossing his face before it transformed back into that sinister grin. "But you're already here, Mommy. We can't let you go." Her throat tightened, the weight of despair pressing down. She shook her head furiously, searching for anything, an escape, a weapon, a way out of this nightmare. But everything seemed out of reach. Suddenly, a loud crack resounded through the room, the door splintering under the pressure of a force she couldn't see. The child's grin widened, as if he knew something she did not. The darkness surged, spilling through the cracks and pooling around her feet. "Playtime is almost over," he sang sweetly, a terrible finality laced in his voice. With one last desperate push, she ripped open the window, shards of glass cutting her arm as she dove through the gaping hole, tumbling into the abyss beyond. The last thing she saw was his face, his eyes glimmering with a predatory delight just before the darkness swallowed her whole. Angela landed hard on a cold surface, gasping as she clutched her arm, warm blood smeared against her skin. Blinking rapidly, she found herself sprawled on the floor of another room, the air still thick with dread, but this one felt different. Shadows danced wildly, but there was no laughter. No joyful cries. Had she escaped? Or was this merely the next level of the game? She rose cautiously, scanning the walls, her heart drumming a chaotic echo in her chest. The room was barren, save for an old, flickering television screen. With a trembling hand, she reached for the remote perched on a table next to her. As she hit the power button, the screen flooded to life and her breath caught in her throat. Faces, so many faces, all twisted in agony and fear, stared back at her. The screen glitched and warped, revealing scenes that couldn't possibly exist in the world she remembered. Each face echoed with whispers, all repeating a single word that sent chills racing down her spine: join. And as the reality of her situation settled in, Angela understood this was just the beginning of something far worse than a game. How many had come before her? And would she be next to join their ranks forever? The television flickered, sending jagged shadows dancing across the walls, each face on the screen morphing into something equally terrifying and familiar. Angela's heart pounded violently against her ribcage. The whispers grew louder, saturating the air with an atmosphere thick enough to choke on. Join us echoed through her mind like a warning, or a demand. She could almost see them, the faces of lost souls begging for her attention, begging for her despair. Each one felt like a dagger pressed against her sanity, urging her to give in. But she couldn't. Wincing, Angela pressed her palm against the blood-soaked fabric of her sleeve, the warmth a stark reminder of her physical injuries. She was alive, at least for now, and that meant she still had a chance to break free. But where to go? The room offered no exits she could find, only the television, its cursed glow, and the creeping silence swarming around her. She took a step back, desperate to clear her mind. Suddenly, a low, guttural noise rippled through the walls like a growl, tugging at her primal instinct to run. Enough playing, Angela, a voice rumbled through the darkness, deep and resonant. It felt cold against her skin, wrapping around her like a serpent. You're already part of the game. You just don't know it yet. Angela's breath hitched again. She whipped around, searching for the source of the voice, but she was alone, or at least she thought she was. The shadows flickered, casting doubt against the corners of her vision. Something was watching. She could feel it. And then, a swift movement caught her eye. The images on the screen had changed. They morphed into scenes of laughter, light, and a grotesque sense of fun, juxtaposed against the familiar faces twisted in fear. Children playing. Haunted laughter that danced in the air like a sickening tune. No. This can't be happening. She shouted, her voice trembling. Each shout felt futile against the growing cacophony of haunting giggles echoing through the room. Suddenly, the lights began to flicker faster, heartbeat-like, as one by one, the faces turned their hollow eyes toward her. Their mouths twisted in wide, stretching smiles that threatened to consume the space around her. Join, they sang, a nightmarish choir of despair that in her chest, a swell of terror overtook her. Angela closed her eyes tight, groping for any sense of reality as panic gripped her. The air grew denser, thick with the muck of their longing. She opened her eyes, and the room transformed. The barren space now felt like the inside of a cage, closing in on her from all sides. The TV screen flashed a series of images, one child's face after another, each familiar yet distorted, the same haunting faces she had seen in the dark room with the twisted child. Desperate, Angela yanked the remote again, smashing buttons wildly. Each keystroke was laced with a frantic hope it would end this madness. Yet, it only made it worse. The screen distorted further, revealing blurred figures that seemed to reach out, their fingers stretching through, clawing at the edges of her perception. In that instant, a revelation jolted through her. It wasn't just the faces of children she recognized, but a familiar childhood friend whose laughter once brought her joy. What was once innocent was marred by terror now, and the connection sent her spiraling into despair. Enough! She screamed at the screen, but as the noise filled the air again, a blue haze enveloped her, pulling her into the depths of their anguish. The floor beneath her seemed to shift, crumbling like sand. Before she could brace herself, she felt herself falling, plunging deeper into a void that promised no escape. "Playtime isn't over, Angela," the voice echoed eerily around her, darker than before. And then, nothing, for a moment, darkness conquered all. As she thudded back against a different cold floor, a sudden realization washed over her. The childish voices were rising again, they weren't gone, just waiting. But this time, they sounded closer, more powerful. Angela had escaped one nightmare, but where had she landed? And what waited for her now in this unending abyss of terror? The air around Angela felt different, charged and thick with something unnameable. She blinked rapidly, attempting to comprehend the stark change in her surroundings. The room she found herself in was dim, illuminated only by a flickering light overhead that buzzed like a troubling insect. Concrete walls encased her, damp and grimy. Shadows stretched out in unnatural forms, making her feel cramped and cornered. A single, rusted metal table dominated the space, its surface stained with dark patches that might have once been brown. Her mind raced back to the faces she had seen, their twisted mouths still echoing in her ears like a cursed song. "Where am I?" she whispered to the silence, her voice trembling. She held her breath, listening for a response, but only the hum overhead filled the void. She pushed herself off the cold floor and stood unsteadily, the ache in her arm a reminder of her last encounter. Tentatively, she stepped toward the table. Its surface was covered in shattered glass shards, remnants of a picture frame, perhaps, but the memory was lost. As she paced around the table, her foot kicked something hard. She glanced down, immediately recognizing a porcelain doll's head, cracked and grinning. Its empty eye sockets seemed to follow her movements, a relic of innocence now aligned with horror. She recoiled, powerfully aware of every heartbeat pounding inside her chest. Suddenly, the flickering light dimmed, the shadows surged closer as if alive. Anger, fear, and something more primal bubbled within her. She gritted her teeth and shouted, "What do you want from me?" The walls reverberated, her voice swallowed by the creeping silence that settled in the aftermath. A soft murmur filled the air, barely audible but unmistakable. "Playtime never ends." The words crawled along her skin like an icy breeze. They twisted her insides, making her stomach churn with dread. Before she could react, the cell-like environment trembled, as if acknowledging her presence. Wicked, hollow laughter echoed within the walls, chasing her thoughts like wild animals. With a wild surge of adrenaline, she ran toward a metal door at the far end of the room, dragging her fingers against the rough concrete walls for balance. She tried the handle locked tight. Panic clawed at her throat, and her breathing quickened, each breath a gasping plea for release. "Let me out." Her words hung in the air, desperate and useless. She banged on the metal, her fists ricocheting painfully. The laughter escalated, overwhelming her until it morphed into something different, something darker. "Let you out." The voice echoed, slithering through the room like smoke. "But you've only just arrived." A sliver of light appeared beneath the door, illuminating the cracked tiles, accompanied by a whisper that seemed to seep through the edges. "Don't you want to play?" For a fraction of a second, she hesitated. Deep down, curiosity festered alongside fear. What did this invitation mean? But before she could contemplate further, the door lurched. Her heart raced, the pulse in her ears drowning out her thoughts. In one swift motion, the door swung wide, revealing a swirling fog. The shadows within twisted, recoiling as if waiting to unleash horrors still unseen. She stood frozen, caught between the thrill of escape and the terror of what lay beyond. Angela took a shaky step inside the mist. The air felt electric, brimming with an energy that was both terrifying and captivating. But as she crossed the threshold, the laughter returned, more vibrant and insistent, wrapping around her like an embrace. "You're one of us now." The door slammed shut behind her with a finality that resonated in her bones, and then, a laugh from the fog sent chills swirling down her spine. Where would this ghastly invitation lead her next? What awaited her in this new realm of dread? The fog enveloped Angela, curling around her like ghostly tendrils. A softness consumed her senses at first, but it quickly morphed into a chilling weight. She felt as though the very air was treading upon her skin, heavy with secrets. She moved forward, though every fiber urged her to retreat. The shadows shifted and danced, they were like dim figures from her memories, half-formed and malevolent. The laughter receded but lingered like an echo of broken promises, curdling the air. Before long, the fog began to thin, revealing a vast, almost cavernous room. A dim light hung from the ceiling, flickering erratically as if in fear of what it illuminated. The surfaces around her were slick with a moisture that made the walls glisten, reflecting what little light could find its way through the dark. "Where are you?" she called out, her voice cracking under the weight of uncertainty. It felt absurd to be asking for a presence she couldn't see, but dread hung thick in the air, urging her to seek answers. Across the chamber, a small door stood ajar. A soft light slipped out of it, a stark contrast to the oppressive gloom. Gathering her courage, she approached the door, each step echoing eerily against the hard floor. Halfway there, she felt a sudden chill sweep through her, clawing up her back, gnawing at her will. And then it happened, a sudden, sharp sound sliced through the silence. A whisper curled around her. Angela, it coiled around her name, smooth and sinister, pulling at her core. She froze again, mouth dry, heart racing. "Who are you?" She barely recognized her voice, it was mere air, tinted with panic. The figure appeared, emerging from the fog, a gaunt silhouette with elongated limbs and fingers that bent at unnatural angles. "We've been waiting," it rasped, its face obscured by shadow, save for two glaring eyes. They shimmered like pools of black obsidian, hungry and empty. Angela staggered back, her mind racing. "What do you want with me?" "It's your turn to play," it replied, stepping closer with fluid grace, every movement deliberate as it sliced through the mist. Instinctively, Angela backed away until her shoulder collided with the cold wall. "No. You don't understand." "Don't understand what?" The voice distorted. It twisted, echoing in tones that mirrored her own fears. "You're the player now. The game is simple. Survive or surrender." A flicker of memory surged within her, faces from her past, trapped in the same hellish void. Their eyes had screamed for help, but all she had done was watch. She couldn't end up like them. "Please let me go," she shouted, the desperation spilling from her lips. But the figure merely tilted its head, a grin spreading across its mouth that was far too wide, revealing teeth too sharp for something human. "You think you can escape?" The whispers grew louder, overlapping in a mad cacophony that pressed against her mind. She crawled back down to the floor, pushing her hands against her ears, trying to drown out the chaos. Suddenly, the walls began to pulse like a living entity, breathing alongside her. An electric shock of panic jolted through her spine as the echoes faded into the void, leaving only the dark gaze of the figure. "By the way," it said, leaning closer, an insidious glint in its eyes. "The game starts now." She looked at the figure, terror igniting within her as it raised an arm, a sharp metal blade glinting ominously in the dim light. Her breath caught in her throat as her heart pounded loudly, drowning out reason. "Run," the shadows whispered, urging her into the depths of fear. Without thinking, she bolted toward the other side of the cavern, adrenaline surging. She could feel the tension electrifying the air behind her, knowing with every beat that the game was far from over. What had she stumbled into? What horrors awaited her in this nightmarish realm? Yet, as she dashed through the fog, determined to escape the blade's menacing glint, another sound crawled from the shadows, a twisted, echoing laugh, one that told her it would never let her go. Angela's heart raced as she sprinted into the depths of the cavern, her breath burning in her chest with each frantic gasp. The shadows seemed alive, swirling around her, taunting and whispering that escape was futile. She could hear the echoing footsteps of her pursuer, a rhythmic reminder of the danger closing in. You can't hide forever. The figure's voice rang out, sinister and mocking, every instinct urged her onward. She had to find a way out. It's all she could think of, yet the cavern twisted into a labyrinth of despair, walls forming grotesque shapes. Panic gnawed at her, and she barely navigated the treacherous paths, desperation propelling her forward, but as she rounded a corner, she skidded to a halt. Before her stood a wall, a solid barrier of darkness. Her heart sank. The shadowy figure loomed at the opposite end of the corridor, blade glinting ominously in its grip. She had run right into a trap. Frantically searching for another escape, her eyes darted to the sides. There an opening in the wall, just wide enough for her to slip through. With no time to waste, she dove towards it, squeezing with all her strength. The sound of the blade slicing through the air filled the space behind her, a chilling reminder of her narrow escape. She tumbled through the opening, landing hard on the cold, damp earth, gasping for breath. She lay there, catching her breath, chest heaving with the realization of how close she had come to a fate worse than death. The darkness felt less oppressive here, almost welcoming, wrapping her in a deceptive embrace. Cautiously, she pushed herself up. As she turned her head to assess her surroundings, a soft glow caught her eye. A faint light pulsed rhythmically in the distance, almost like a heartbeat. Compelled to approach, she followed the glow, weaving through the jagged formations of rock. With each cautious step, a shiver of hope ignited within her. Just maybe, this could lead to her escape. The light grew brighter, illuminating a small room beyond a sanctuary against the terror lurking in the shadows. The walls were adorned with images of children, laughing and playing in bright colors, memories frozen in time. Some faces were familiar, but twisted in ways that sent chills down her spine. As she stepped into the room, a profound sense of stillness filled the air. It was here that the whispers quieted, replaced by a soothing melody that felt achingly familiar. She approached the center, the source of the glow emanating from a single, magnificent mirror. Its surface shimmered with an ethereal light, and her reflection was not just her own, it portrayed her younger self, laughing freely, unburdened by fear. Tears welled in her eyes. This was the part of her she had locked away, buried deep under the weight of adult worries and regrets. You have to find her again, a voice echoed from the mirror, soft yet firm. What do you mean? Angela whispered, perplexed. Embrace the light. Embrace who you are, the voice urged, filled with warmth. Angela felt the weight of the darkness pressing in again, threatening to envelop her. Gathering her courage, she reached out toward the mirror, fingers brushing against the luminous surface. Suddenly, a whirlwind of memories flooded her mind, her children's laughter, moments of pure joy, and the love that had once filled her heart. Please, she murmured to herself, realizing these memories were not just silhouettes of joy, they were her lifeline. I want to let this darkness take me or my past. In that moment, a wall of light exploded outward from the mirror, washing over her, engulfing the shadows that had tormented her for so long. The malignant presence receded, screams of rage echoing in the void beyond, but Angela stood firm, resolute, with her heart full of light and a newfound sense of purpose. Angela turned away from the mirror, stepping back through the cavern, the figure of malice unable to cross the threshold of her determined spirit. As she sprinted forward, the path began to illuminate with each step she took, paving the way to freedom. Finally, she burst through an opening, blindly stumbling into the refreshing air of a moonlit night. She paused, looking around, surreal relief flooding over her. The chill of the night was nothing compared to the warmth in her chest. Angela took a deep breath, feeling the weight of fear lift completely. I'm free, she whispered, glancing back at the cavern from which she'd escaped. There was a moment of silence before she turned her gaze towards the horizon. As she made her way toward home, she felt different, stronger. She had faced her fears, had confronted the darkness that had lurked in her past, and emerged victorious. I won't forget, she vowed, each word a promise to herself. As she stepped onto familiar ground, a sense of peace washed over her. She would cherish her memories, her children, and live fully in the light. The sinister game was over, but she knew this journey had shaped her indelibly. And as she crossed the threshold into her home, the ghostly shadow of her past receded into nothingness, leaving behind the laughter of her children echoing in the night, a sound forever intertwined with hope. Now, it's your turn. Don't let the darkness linger. Subscribe immediately so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm. Flood the comments section with your reactions, thoughts, and theories about the ending. And for the love of everything, instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to show your support now. Don't wait even one more second, make your voice heard.